Alright, what is up guys? Welcome to another model kit review. This time we are yet again doing something that is not related to Zoids at all, but is also not a Gundam, because as much as I do like Gundam, I feel like Gunpla building and Gundam fans is such a deep rabbit hole that's already so populated by subject matter experts that know exactly what they're talking about. And so there's not really any room to necessarily talk about any of that from a newcomer or an outsider as far as that community goes. So that's why I kind of focused on Zoids as a niche. However, I enjoyed this model kit so much that I figured I would do a review of it, even though it is technically a Bandai Master Grade that is of the same design sensibilities and the same types of product lines as a Gundam. So we'll go ahead and get right into it. So this is the Bandai Master Grade 1/8 scale Kotetsu Kaburagi, or Wild Tiger, from the anime Tiger and Bunny. And this is a series that I'm highly looking forward to talking about in other videos. If you guys subscribe to the main Star-Crossed Souls channel, I'm doing some highly edited and like deep production quality anime review style videos over there. And one day I do plan to talk about Tiger and Bunny, because it is kind of a niche, obscure series that had a bit of popularity for a while and a bit of merchandise made off of it, but it didn't really have a lasting standing power as a big franchise, and only existed for 2 seasons, which is ideal. 2 seasons and 2 movies was the runtime of the anime, and I think that's preferable to a series that goes for hundreds and hundreds of episodes, but again, that's just my preference. And I think that made the story more concise and more easily digestible. And for those of you that are not familiar with the series, I'll go a little bit into the lore and who Kotetsu Kaburagi is. So, in the world of Tiger and Bunny, it's a pseudo-futuristic version of Japan where, over the course of time, humans have developed weird mutated genetics in which superpowers have begun to manifest, very similar to mutants in X-Men or later the quirks in Hero Academia. But this series predated Hero Academia. It came out in 2012, and it was not based on any other intellectual property. This was not an adaptation from a manga. It was an original animation that later had an anime a manga adapted from it. But essentially, you have a world of superpowers where the show tries to take a sort of commentary on capitalism and exploitation of superheroes and commercialism, and basically says that, hey, all these superhuman people, we're going to put them on TV and make this TV show with sponsors and advertisements and try to sell merchandise. It's very much the same type of sort of superhero commentary that, like, if you play the Ratchet and Clank series, Ratchet Deadlock sort of had the same type of storyline going on. And so you get the feeling that not everything is as it seems behind the scenes. And Kotetsu Kaburagi was an old school superhero who sort of came into it in the early days. And he has just a very simple superpower of super strength. He can magnify his strength 100 times, but it only lasts for a few minutes. And so he was kind of becoming obsolete in the rankings of the other superheroes for a while, and then the appearance of a brand new superhero hit the scene, a guy named Barnaby Brooks Jr., who had this sleek, awesome-looking suit and very reminiscent of like an Iron Man, or almost sort of like a Kamen Rider suit as well in a way. Sort of took the stage and blew everybody away, and so Kotetsu, as Wild Tiger, lost his contracting deal with his sponsor because they were kind of going out of business. And so he got picked up by another company, and they said, you are going to be partners with Barnaby. And so that's kind of what set them into motion. So we have this ragtag buddy cop sort of duo with the old, I shouldn't say old, but the more old school hardened veteran versus the cocky new kid, sort of. And it has a sort of cliche setup in that regard, but as you get into it, everything is very well done. The animation is gorgeous. It blends CGI and hand-drawn very well. When these suits are on screen, they are all CGI, but the frame rate and the blending of the traditional animation does make it look really good. So I think it's a series that holds up very well to this day, and you guys should definitely go out there and watch it. And so what you're seeing here is Kotetsu's Wild Tiger suit after he gets the new sponsorship and is put as Barnaby's partner. And so his old suit was very much like Adam West Batman style suit. Like, it was blue spandex. It was very corny looking. And so this was sort of an improvement to make it look more modernized, a little bit more like an Iron Man suit. And I think it looks pretty awesome. And so I won't spoil anything else from the anime from here. We'll go ahead and talk about the model kit itself. So this is, again, a 1/8 scale because it's not based off a mecha that's like dozens, if not hundreds of feet tall. It's based off a real person. And so rather than doing something like, 1/72nd scale or 1/100th scale, it's just simply 1/8 scale. So this actually scales very nicely next to a lot of anime figures and statues, but strangely enough does not scale well next to other Gundams, which is interesting, but we'll get into that. So the building process for this was very much just build the sort of exoskeleton first that basically makes the undersuit for his armor. So he puts on like an undersuit like you would for armor like this. It's sort of like a wetsuit or a Zentai suit. And so that's the bottom layer of the model kit, which some of which is visible on the torso there. This underside right here is kind of the first part that you build. And then you build you can kind of see it here, a little bit on the arms as well. And then you build the armor on top of that. I did take a picture of what that armor, what the Under Armour looked like before I added the armor on top of it, but it looks a lot more complete here because the helmet is very large, and this very tall protruding collar definitely sort of gives it a more complete feel to it. And so it didn't look right with just the head sticking up obnoxiously over the top like that, especially considering that this is a model kit. Things like elbow joints and neck joints, all those pins and points of articulation definitely make a human body look very unnatural. And so when it's put together and you give it more of a robotic look, it makes sense. That's kind of the difference between, like, to use another example, the Figma series line of articulated anime figures versus like Revoltech figures. It's like, Revoltech figures look good if it's a mecha or something, but if it's a human, it usually looks awful because the proportions are all wrong and you can see all of the pins and hinges and points of articulation, whereas the Figma series line does their best to disguise those and make them more subtle. But it works here with Kotetsu because, of course, it is a suit of armor that he's wearing, so it does have a sort of mecha appearance to it. And as we add the armor on top of it, again, you get to add these shoulder pads here, which have some nice translucent plastic, and I've added some of the sticker decals there for some of his sponsors. So obviously SoftBank is a huge, massive, real corporation, which does have some prominence in Japan. And then the irony here of SHF Figure Arts is that that's sort of Bandai's sort of more economy, cheaper brand compared to like a standard like Bandai figure. And so that's like an intentional meta joke between him and Barnaby, where Barnaby has the actual Bandai logo on his suit as a sponsor. Those of you who have attempted to watch this series on Netflix may have also noticed that on the Netflix version of the series, the sponsors and the logos were removed from the opening scene. So it kind of makes the camera angles look a little bit weird, whereas, they were meant to show off all these, sponsors, and it's not necessarily like a cash grab kind of thing. It's more of a self-aware kind of, we are doing like a product placement riddle cash grab kind of thing, but it's self-aware and it's a commentary on that. And so I thought that was interesting, and I think the anime handled that very well. I think I might actually be missing some pieces because right here, that silver bit is filled in and it's not on mine. So I may have to go back in there and see if I missed a piece. As you're building it, there's also quite a few. I'm going to actually just show the box and show you guys the different configurations that you can build this guy with. So there's a lot of different customizable parts you can go for, which is pretty typical of a Gundam. So with his standard arms, they just kind of, lay at rest. Of course, there's a bunch of different hand combinations you can do as well. He has a grappling hook weapon that you can add on as well. And he also has a sort of super arm power where the arm part of his armor changes into a giant fist, and that's the good luck mode, as the anime calls it. And that's sort of a combination power that Kotetsu and Barnaby do together, where it's Kotetsu's fist and Barnaby's foot that transforms into this giant power fist like that and takes advantage of their superpowers. So one day I might build those and add those accessories on there, but I left him pretty much stock, although I did give him some special hands. So we're going to do a couple poses and show off the articulation on this guy, and we'll be right back. So yeah, he is actually quite poseable, so I can go ahead and talk about the different points of articulation that he has, because it's really interesting when you see it up close. So obviously, like, the shoulders and the hips are on ball joints, which makes sense. The knees are this weird double jointed array where down here is a point of articulation, and down here and up here is a point of articulation, which means that the entire leg can kind of pivot like that around the knee, which is kind of a realistic thing as well. The ankles are on ball joints, and the front part of the foot is on a point of articulation as well, where the toes can kind of pivot forward to give those really important action poses like that. The wrists are on a ball joint, and of course the fingers are articulated because you got to switch out to a different hand, which is fine. The way the elbows actually come together is two pieces that connect in the center like that, and so they kind of rotate around each other. And then there's actually another point of articulation there at the below the elbow. But yeah, that entire thing rotates, and then it rotates the upper bicep as well. And then, as I mentioned, of course you have articulation again at the waist and in the upper torso as well. And then the peg that is his neck rotates at the bottom and on the top, so you can kind of have a larger range of motion as his head moves down like that and is still able to rotate. So I think that's pretty awesome. That's actually pretty standard, pretty par for the course when it comes to mecha and Gunpla and stuff like that. I actually don't know why he refuses to stand perfectly straight. It's like he wants to lean to one side, and I've tried to reposition. Oh, I think I know what it is. It's the height that his hips are at, so I think I've adjusted that a little bit, and it should stand up a little bit better now. Maybe I can move that hip up a little bit. But there's also a piece that I didn't do where you can lift up on the face shield and add his actual face in there. I would like to add that in, but I was sick when I was building this and I kind of wanted to get it over with. But the build process for this was actually very nice, and I do highly recommend it. And I absolutely love the translucent green plastic that's on here. It looks absolutely fantastic. And even the clear translucent plastic looks really good as well. And there's not that much of a clash between the solid green and the translucent green. It actually matches quite well. And I only added a couple of decals to add, like the SoftBank and the SHF Figure Arts thing in there. And there's a lot more decals, obviously, that come with it, including his eyes, which I would like to add at some point. Where can you find this guy? So, I don't know. I would imagine they're not that difficult to find. The first time I actually saw one of these was in Florida after we left MetroCon in Tampa, and we actually went to the USA Gundam store, and they had the Barnaby there, as well as some other kit where it was like both of them and the little motorcycle thing that they ride, which is pretty cool. But this one I actually got at Hobbytown, and there was another variant of him there that was smaller, and so obviously I went with the Master Grade. It's a really good size. It's exactly the type of model that I would like to build. So, and then since then I haven't seen any other of the Tiger and Bunny kits make it to Hobbytown, although they probably could custom order them upon request, assuming that Bandai still has a supply of them overseas. Granted, everything has become a lot more difficult to import thanks to COVID, and the value of collectibles has skyrocketed, so a lot of this stuff has become inaccessible due to being bought out on the secondary market and is now very expensive. I did actually check, I think Amazon actually still has the Barnaby for around $60. I would value these things between $45 and $60. I wouldn't really pay much more than that, but I wouldn't be surprised if they have gone up to prices higher than that. And if I can find the Barnaby one, I will definitely do a review on it as well, although to my knowledge there aren't any of the other Tiger and Bunny characters that they've adapted into these model kits, because if they did Sky High, I would buy that one as well, because I love that character. But yeah, that about does it for this video, so thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time, and hopefully we'll have Barnaby eventually to do a review of as well. Do you guys miss the gaming content I used to do on this channel? Did you guys know this is actually my second channel? My wife Michelle and I over on the primary Star-Crossed Souls channel do gaming content as well as content about conventions and cosplay and some of the niche fandoms we're into such as Fire Emblem, Fate, and Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm also doing a retrospective series on the entire Type Moon series and all of the Fate works. It's a series I'm very proud of and has the highest amount of editing and production quality in anything I've ever done in my entire career of making videos. So if you guys are interested in checking that out, make sure to follow us on the main Star-Crossed Souls channel and follow Michelle and I on Instagram for her art projects and my cosplay projects. I'll see you guys next time.